1882. The palace holds a full state funeral for its queen. Incense burns for days. Officials weep on cue and off it. There's only one problem. The woman they're mourning is alive, hiding in a farmhouse 200 kilometers away, disguised as a commoner. Her name is Queen Min, and this isn't even the version of her death that eventually kills her. It's a decoy, staged by her own allies to save her life. The real ending comes 13 years later. It leaves no body to bury at all. Rewind to the beginning. She's chosen for this palace in 1866 specifically because she has almost no family left. Both parents dead. No powerful relatives who could interfere in state affairs through her. The regent wants a daughter-in-law with no leverage of her own. He gets exactly what he ordered, on paper. 15-year-old Min marries 15-year-old King Gyeongbokgung. For the regent, Gyeongbokgung's own father, the Daewongun, an orphan bride with no faction behind her looks like the safest possible choice. He miscalculates almost immediately. Min doesn't come from a powerful family, so she builds one. She starts placing her own distant relatives, the extended Min clan, into minor court positions, one appointment at a time, patient enough that nobody notices the pattern until it's already a faction. Her early years aren't easy. Gyeongbokgung favors another consort, Lady Yi, who bears him a son before Min's own children survive infancy. Court gossip already writes her off as sidelined. Court gossip is about to be spectacularly wrong. She reads obsessively, Korean history, Chinese classics, whatever foreign dispatches she can get translated. Nobody assigned her a political education. She built one herself, in private, while everyone around her assumed she was simply staying out of the way. For 7 years, the Daewongun rules as regent in all but name, sidelining his own son, the king. Min's growing faction watches, recruits, and waits. The Daewongun's entire political identity rests on keeping Korea closed to foreign influence, the so-called hermit kingdom policy. Every port Min later opens, every foreign advisor she brings in, becomes a personal repudiation of everything he spent his regency building. They don't move until they have the numbers to win outright. In 1873, they move. A coordinated wave of memorials accuses the Daewongun of failed policy and government overreach. Gyeongbokgung, backed by Min's faction, declares his own personal rule. The regent is forced out. An orphan chosen specifically because she couldn't build a power base, just built one, and used it to remove the most powerful man in the country. Officially, Gyeongbokgung now rules. In practice, foreign diplomats and court officials alike quickly learn who actually makes the decisions that matter. Within a few years, Min is functionally running Korean foreign and domestic policy, modernization efforts, military reform, delicate balancing between Qing China and an increasingly aggressive Japan. Under her influence, Korea opens trade ports, sends study missions abroad, and begins forming a modern, foreign-trained military unit. Real, substantive change, pushed by a queen the regent picked specifically for being unable to push anything at all. This is the part that matters for everything that follows. Min hasn't just outmaneuvered her father-in-law. She's made him the single person in Korea with the strongest personal motive to see her destroyed. And he isn't done. 1882. Underpaid, resentful soldiers, angry over months of unpaid wages and a final ration of rice cut with sand and gravel, riot. The Daewongun, sensing an opening, quietly steers their anger straight at the palace, and specifically at the queen. Part of the resentment is specific. The new Japanese-trained unit gets paid on time and equipped properly. The old-style units, most of the army, get neither for over a year straight. Reform looks like favoritism when half the military is starving for it. The mob storms the palace, looking specifically for her. She escapes only by disguising herself as a palace servant and walking straight past soldiers hunting for a queen in silk, not a woman in plain gray cloth carrying laundry. She spends weeks hiding in the countryside under a false name, while her allies scramble to control the story. Word needs to reach the court that she's alive, without giving the mob, or the Daewongun, briefly back in power, a target. A handful of loyal officials coordinate the deception in secret, forged travel arrangements, coached mourners, a story consistent enough to survive scrutiny from a court still full of her enemies. The solution is the funeral we opened on. A full-state funeral, genuine mourners, an empty bier. As far as the public and most of the court know, Queen Min is dead. It buys her exactly the time she needs. Qing China intervenes to restore order, arrests the Daewongun, and ships him off to China for the next 3 years. Min returns from the dead, resumes her position, and picks up exactly where she left off. 2 years later, a different threat. Reform-minded, pro-Japanese officials stage the Gapsin coup, briefly seizing the palace and declaring a new government. Min is again a primary target. The coup leaders announce a 14-point reform program, equality before the law, an end to certain tribute obligations to Qing China, a modern cabinet system. Ambitious, popular with almost nobody who actually holds power in the country at that moment. Qing troops again intervene, crushing the coup within 3 days. She survives a second attempt on her position in as many years. The pattern isn't subtle. Every faction in East Asia trying to control Korea's future keeps running into the same obstacle. The real threat is bigger than any single faction. Qing China and Japan are on a collision course over who controls Korea's future, and in 1894, that collision becomes an actual war. Japan wins the First Sino-Japanese War decisively. Qing influence over Korea collapses almost overnight. Min, who spent 2 decades using Qing backing as a counterweight to Japan, suddenly has no counterweight left. Korean officials of the era have a phrase for this exact position: a shrimp caught between fighting whales. Min spends 2 decades trying to keep her country from being crushed by picking whichever whale seems less dangerous at the time. So she builds a new one. Min begins cultivating a pro-Russian faction at court, seeking Russian backing to check Japan's now unopposed influence over the peninsula. It's the same playbook that's worked for 20 years. It's not just diplomatic friendliness. Min's court starts granting Russia real economic footholds, timber concessions, mining rights, informal military advising. Every concession is a message to Tokyo. Japan's monopoly on influence here just ended. This time, the man on the other side isn't interested in being outmaneuvered again. Japanese Minister Miura Goro concludes that as long as Min is alive and influential, Japan's position in Korea stays unstable. He starts planning something considerably more permanent than a coup. Miura disguises the operation as a routine training exercise for the Japanese-aligned Korean military unit. Paperwork, cover story, and timing all arranged in advance. On paper, Nothing unusual is happening near the palace that morning at all. October 8th, 1895. Before dawn, a mixed force of Japanese agents, hired Ronin, and Korean collaborators from a Japanese-trained military unit converge on the palace. This isn't a riot anyone can blame on spontaneous anger. It's planned, armed, and specific. They cut down palace guards and officials in their path without hesitation, moving with a clear objective through the residence. The minister of the royal household is killed trying to slow them down. The attackers don't stop. They don't know exactly what she looks like, so they seize and kill several women in the inner quarters just to be certain, checking each one against a description before moving to the next. Eventually, they find her. What happens next isn't disputed by serious historians, even if it took over a century for the full details to surface publicly. She's dragged outside and killed there, not in some clean, private manner, in the open, with swords, in front of anyone still nearby to see it. This isn't an assassination trying to look accidental. It's a message. Officials who survived by hiding spend the rest of that morning realizing, piece by piece, exactly what happened while they stayed out of sight. Nobody who lived through it agrees on every detail. Everyone agrees on the outcome. Then comes the part that actually matters for the mystery this video opened with. They burn her body on palace grounds before sunrise, destroying the one thing that could prove definitively who she was and exactly what had been done to her. No coffin, no funeral, real or staged. Nothing left to identify, let alone bury. By the next morning, all that remains are a few scorched fragments, pieces of jewelry, scraps of fabric, gathered quietly by attendants and used alongside witness testimony to confirm what everyone already suspected, but nobody could fully prove. A Russian architect working in the palace, Afanasy Seredin-Sabatin, witnesses parts of the chaos and writes a detailed account within days, one of the few outside contemporary records of what actually happened that morning. Japan's government response is immediate and simple: deny everything. No government involvement, they claim. Just rogue actors acting on their own initiative. Nothing that reflects official policy. International pressure eventually forces a trial in Japan. Minister Miura Goro and dozens of others stand accused of orchestrating a foreign head of state's assassination. The result: acquittals across the board, citing insufficient evidence. The trial is held not in Korea, but in Hiroshima. Japanese soil, Japanese judges, a Japanese legal standard for a killing committed in a foreign palace. It takes weeks, not months, to conclude. The men who planned the murder of a queen face essentially no consequences from the government whose interests they were serving. Historians still argue about exactly how far up the order went. 3 real positions still debated today. Position 1. Miura acted essentially alone, a hardline minister exceeding his authority in the belief Tokyo would quietly approve after the fact. The acquittals support this reading if you trust a trial run by the same government accused of ordering the killing. Position 2. Explicit authorization came from Tokyo, later buried. Surviving telegram exchanges show the foreign ministry aware something was being planned, though careful never to put intent in writing. Position 3 sits between them. Tacit approval rather than a direct order. Deniability built in from the start. Exactly the kind of arrangement designed so nobody at the top ever has to answer for it directly. Miura Goro doesn't just walk free. He goes on to hold minor government advisory roles for years afterward, his role in a queen's assassination reduced, in his own official record, to little more than a footnote. Gyeongbokgung doesn't feel safe in his own palace after this. Within months, he flees in secret to the Russian legation, where he governs Korea in exile from a foreign embassy for nearly a year. The king of a country too afraid to rule from his own throne. For nearly a year, foreign diplomats hold more practical access to Korea's king than his own court does. It's an extraordinary admission. The government can no longer guarantee its own monarch's safety inside his own palace. The killing backfires badly as propaganda. Instead of neutralizing opposition to Japanese influence, it hardens it, becoming one of the founding grievances of a Korean independence movement that will spend the next 50 years fighting Japanese occupation. In 1897, Gyeongbokgung declares the Korean Empire, elevating himself from king to emperor, and posthumously elevates Min as well. Empress Myeongseong, a grander title than she ever held while she was alive to use it. She's eventually given a proper imperial tomb decades later, a real physical resting place built for remains that were never actually recovered. The grave exists. What's inside it, by any strict definition, doesn't. For over a century, the official story stayed vague on exactly how she died. Assassinated, certainly, but the brutal specifics stayed softened in most retellings. That changed in 2005, when newly surfaced documents confirmed the fuller, uglier version. Dragged outside, killed with swords in view of witnesses. A century of textbooks got the manner of her death wrong, not because historians were lying, but because the people who committed it made absolutely sure the physical proof burned along with her. Here's what the modern retelling likes to simplify. She wasn't a committed reformer in the ideological sense. She was a survivalist, backing whichever foreign power and whichever policy kept her and her family in power longest. The reforms were often a byproduct, not the goal. Modern Korean historians remain divided on her legacy for exactly this reason. Some remember her as a martyred symbol of resistance to Japanese aggression. Others point out that her own political survival, not the nation's, was consistently what she optimized for. Track the shape of her whole life against the shape of her death, chosen for having no power. She built a faction anyway. Declared dead once to save herself. Declared dead for real 13 years later, with nothing left afterward to disprove it. Twice in her life, Korea told the world she was dead. The first time was a lie that saved her. The second time was true, and it was almost enough to erase whether any of it happened at all. The site where it happened is a quiet corner of a public palace today. Most visitors walk past the plaque without reading it, which might be the last part of the erasure nobody planned and nobody's been able to undo.